So the descendants of the murderer. Cain built the city. He built an entire city, and he talked about building the city and all of that with his children. So he used the skill set to build a city. How many of y'all are out here building cities, or your family has built a city? All right. Hi, everyone. You did it. Welcome to part 6 of how to transform your frustration into financial forward momentum and 6 skills. I am Vernita, the Brilliant Solutionist, where we are talking about life and business skills the practical way, but from biblical perspective. You have made it. I am excited. You should be giving yourself a woohoo. Now, if you just happen to see this video, you have to go all the way back, even to the intro video where I tell you how spilling your tea, one, is biblical, and it can lead to wealth and building wealth. And then I lay the foundation to show you that these 6 skills are a way for you to do that, build that foundation, and get that financial forward momentum that you are seeking. And then all of that comes together to hopefully you do it right to build wealth for you and your family and those you love and want to do great things for. All right, so skill number 6, we're talking about systematizing or automation or organization. And while I said that all of these skills can work in isolation, well, except for mindset, that was skill number 1. Mindset pairs with all the other skills, but after mindset, each one can be used for a business in itself. But I want to remind you that I'm not talking, notice that I didn't say that you have to have this type of business, because I think sometimes a lot of us get into the trap. I fell into that to say, oh, well, people said I was good at this, so this must mean I need to do this. Not necessarily. But whatever you decide to do, learning these skill sets, developing them, and learning how to master them will help your business or in entrepreneurial endeavors, whatever ventures you decide to delve into, it will help you go to the max level. And it's all biblical. And if you are a Christian, it is God ordained for us to use these skills. And I gave you scriptures and examples to show you that. So this was not just me saying, oh, I think this sounds good. Although I did think it sounded good, but then it made more sense. And I felt more confident in sharing that with you when I found them in the Bible. So all of these skills, like I said, can work in isolation, but they will be a lot better if you learn how to integrate them to build your own ecosystem of your expertise and frustrations and all the things you learned, and then how to use that to build your own economy. Now, I am going to, this skill set, I'm going to introduce it a little differently. But since you've made it all the way here and you want to learn about how all of this works together, go ahead and click the link down below as of now, so you can watch the culmination of that masterclass. And just a heads up, it will invite you into a next step. But in that complimentary masterclass, I actually teach you more value than I could give you here. So sign up for it, go watch it. It should be available for instant watch time, and just keep the momentum going. Okay. So like I said, this is the climax of all of that. You need a system. So I'll say mindset and this skill set needs to join the other skill sets. Okay. So depending on what you want to do, you may not want to systematize anything. You may not want anything automated. But if you want to get to a level where it's starting to gain momentum and head towards wealth and not just some money coming in, you need systems and automation to help you with that. But I'm going to tell you why that's important and the benefits of doing that. So like I said, this one is going to be a little different. And what I mean by that is I'm going to give you the biblical examples. Now, this is different from the scriptures I'm reading. You can go read the story for yourself. I'm not going to read the story. I'm just going to do the highlighted points of the story. And it came from Genesis chapter 4, starting at verse 17. And I'm only pulling it up to make sure that I have the reference as I'm going through. So Genesis chapter 4, starting at verse 17. So this is what happens when you put systems in place. I learned this from a couple of people, Bishop Wayne Malcolm and Myron Golden. And I've been reading, look, I grew up in the church, and I'm saying that to let you know that we can be around the solutions to the things that we desire and not be aware of them. So I read these stories. Right now I'm reading the Bible in a year. And I read this, now I'm at day 280 something at the time of this recording. Going back in Genesis, I still didn't see it that way and see how it applied to me. And then when I got that revelation, I was like, oh my gosh, I wonder how many other people don't make this connection. And so I'm telling you how the people, they were Cain's descendants. So we'll say like the people who didn't, they weren't on the good side, right? And we'll see how the world is currently operating. So it is time, especially if you're a believer, this means like if it's working for them, it surely can work for us. So there's no reason why we shouldn't have, the financial momentum and the financial turnarounds we're seeking and the wealth to do the things that we're supposed to do, because these people did some incredible things when they use skills. Skills is what I'm highlighting here. I just chose the skills that I share with you through these series, but you'll see that the benefit of getting a skill, learning the skill, and systematizing, automating, or organizing the skill. So you can read the entire story for yourself in Genesis chapter 4, verse 17 through 22. You hear Cain, and we know Cain from Cain and Abel. Well, a lot of attention is placed on Abel. Oh, he died, and all of this, and that was so messed up of Cain. But what happened with Cain and Cain descendants? So the descendants of the murderer. Cain built the city. He built an entire city, and he talked about building the city and all of that with his children. So he used the skill set to build a city. How many of y'all are out here building cities, or your family has built a city? I know a family that has built a city, and it takes a lot, to go into that. Well, not them personally, but they came from that lineage like that. Then you go down later on in the story, verse 19, where it says Jabal created a cattle system. It doesn't use that exact wording, but he used his skill set of watching cows or the livestock, and he created a system for that. He created and organized, instead of us going out there, hunting and killing our animals. Why don't we just develop a system so we can have them here on the land and it'd be easy access for us? So he used the skill set and made a system out of it to have, I'll say, a financial turnaround, because if you know anything about farming and livestock, it is a lucrative business if you know how to get into it. And then in verse 21 it says Jubal created the music industry. Now I said music industry, it doesn't say music industry here, but he used the skill of putting, let me go to it, verse 21. He was a musician, and he learned how to play the lyre and the flute. So he didn't just learn how to play it, he systematized it, organized it, and then that's where the music started coming from. That's where the music industry, all the way back in Genesis, and that's how it was developed. So notice how these were the descendants of Cain. There's a whole story behind this of how the descendants of Cain were building wealth, while the people who went to the Jews, or the people who went on to be the Christians and the believers and the Jews, didn't have all that wealth. They were worshiping. Not, I don't want to say Jews, because Jews, we know traditionally speaking, they are wealthy, but the ones, I don't want to get too deep into it. But essentially, the descendants of Cain, who are pictured as the wicked people, they use all their skill sets to build the wealth. But the ones who were not the descendants of Cain, I don't want to say descendants of Abel, because they had more children, but the ones who weren't like Cain, they were the more worshipers, and they built altars and more religious and things like that. So their skill set was spiritual. Cain's crew skill set was tangible. Now, don't take that like as literal, because there are wealthy people in the Bible who didn't follow what Cain did, and they were wealthy. But I'm just telling you, just overall, that's just kind of how the two pathways went overall. Go look up Myron Golden, and he can break it down for you. All right. So then you have in verse 22, Tubal came, and Tubal came. He was a craftsman and a teacher of the arts and the instruments. So he learned how to put brass and iron together. So he made a system for it, and he taught. Hint, hint. Go back and watch the other videos, because that is a skill set. And he taught them, and then that's where we get the weapons from, and then the weapons of war. It eventually progressed into that. So when you learn how to have a skill set, and then you add you learn how to systematize it and automate and organize it, it goes beyond your wildest dreams, because there are some things you just can't do with your two hands. But when you put systems in place, things grow exponentially. So I wanted to introduce that skill set to you in this way with context. So I'm not just saying, "Hey, go get some systems in place." I want you to see the benefit, and when you see the benefit and go read the story, and then if you follow it all the way through to where we are today, you're like, you know what? I've been sleeping on my skills, and there are some things that I can put together, learn some systems, and organize, and really get this thing pumping, rocking, and rolling. The people that are, I'll say, not Christians or not believers, a lot of them are at these levels of influence, impact, and they have this income because they are utilizing these skills in a way that benefits them. So why wouldn't you think you should do it too? And I'm going to say this again. I think I've said this in every part of the video. A lot of us are praying to God and asking him to help us turn it around for me, Jesus, fix it, Jesus. And Jesus and God looking down like, can you use what I already placed inside of you? And then we're in this day and age where we actually have tools to help us. We don't have to do some of the things that they had to do 10, 20, 30 years ago, or even 5 years ago. We are in this space to make all these skill sets easier, and we can grow them exponentially and using systems. But first we have to have our mindset, figure out which skill set we want to do, or all of them, and then learn how to systematize them. I want you to show the benefit that these were the fathers of those things. Without them, well, eventually somebody probably would have did it, but without the descendants of Cain putting their skills to use, teaching other people how to do it, building systems, we wouldn't have weapons, we wouldn't have the music industry, we wouldn't have the farming industry with livestock and cattle, we wouldn't know how to do infrastructures of cities and things like that. So they did all of that without this technology. So imagine what we can do if we actually developed and mastered the skill sets and understood how to automate them and create systems around them. So that's what I wanted to share with you. Oh, I wasn't finished. See, that's why I got my notes. In Genesis 6, Noah built the ark. He had a skill set of building. He created a system around doing that. There is no way, if you go look at the dimensions of the ark, we weren't talking about some boat. We're not even talking about a cruise ship. You can think of the biggest cruise ship, and the ark was still bigger than that. So he obviously had to have a system in place for it to come to fruition. Then in Genesis chapter 11, the Tower of Babel, where all the people came together, the skill set of speaking, the skills that are speaking, they were all coming together and talking to each other and putting their ideas, then teaching each other on how to build the tower. And even God was like, oh my gosh, look at these people. There's nothing that the human spirit cannot accomplish. Let me go mess this up and break this up real quick, because they're about to make it to heaven. So if God was like, look, what? He gave us the power, like we can literally do anything. And if we put our minds to it and develop, because we have his DNA, we have the power of Christ inside of us. So if we use it, there are people who are using it for evil, but imagine using it for good and what you can do. These people are about to build a tower because they came together and built a system. And God was like, oh no, let me break that up. And First Kings chapter 6, we have King Solomon who built a temple. If you go back and read how he had to structure this, the systems he put in place to build this massive temple, I think it took about 7 years for it to be built. And you hear how he organized it. Just go read it. It will blow your mind. And that's why it's important for you to learn how to systematize your skill set and automate and put things in place and be organized. In Mark chapter 6, it talked about Jesus being in the family business of carpentry. I overlooked this until I heard Bishop Malcolm Wayne say this, that yes, we know that Joseph was the carpenter, but if you look at how they phrased it in the context of the scriptures, it says who Jesus, the carpenter's son, meaning that Joseph was the guy. He was the carpenter, not a carpenter. So he was like the master. He was running the business. He had the shop. He had the factory. He was, who are the people? It just escaped my mind. Like back in the day that owned like the railroad companies. Like he was JP Chase and the Morgan Chase and them people. Dale Carnegie. He was like those people, like I am the one who did this. So Jesus growing up, we don't know a lot about his childhood, but obviously he was working in the family business of carpentry. And if you know anything about carpentry, it's a skill set. And then if he was the carpenter, he had automations and systems in place for it to be a business, for him to be the carpenter's son. And then finally, the New Testament, Paul wrote I think 2/3 of the New Testament, but he did a lot of it through writing letters. So a skill set of writing, but in order for his message to get across, in order for him to spread the gospel and start the early church, he had to put systems in place, and he used the instructions of letters to do that. So if you still don't believe me that automation and systematizing is important to be around your skill set, I just gave you these examples. And I don't want to hold you long. So I'll read just one of the 5 that I found. So if you want to know more about them, comment down below. If enough people do that, I'll make sure I put it together. And then you may have to come back to make sure that I put it there if it's of interest to you. So the first scripture I'll read is Second Corinthians. Nope, that's Chronicles. Second Chronicles, because I abbreviated. It's an H for any. Second Chronicles 26:15. This is the Amplified because I was already there. In Jerusalem, he made machines of war invented by skillful men to put on the towers and on the corner battlements of the purpose of shooting arrows and large stones. And his fame spread far, for he was marvelously helped until he was strong. This was Uzziah. So go and read the whole story. But the point is, he used his skills, created systems, and then it led to a form of wealth. So the Bible is telling us we got these skills, God deposit them inside of us. It's not always what you think it is, but it's something that you may have never done that you may need to try, because that may be the thing that sets you towards this path for financial, for momentum, and then open to doors to other things that you've been dreaming about and the true purpose and calling God has for you. I really talk more about how to put all that together in the masterclass, the complimentary masterclass, and you can find that link down below. So to wrap this all up, regardless of what you do what Colossians, and I'll read this one to you. This is not part of the list, but this is part of the wrap up, because this goes also to mindset as well. If you're still sitting there like, oh, I don't know, that means you're trusting too much in yourself. And this is Colossians chapter 3, verse 23. And again, I'll read it out of the Amplified. I read both because I know it as the King James Version, but I'll read the Amplified first. Whatever you do, whatever your task may be, work from the soul, that is, put in your very best effort as something done for the Lord and not unto men. The King James Version says, and whatsoever you do, do it heartily as to the Lord and not unto men. So if you get out of the mindset of, I'm looking for the wealth, I'm looking for the followers, I want the likes and the comments, you're doing it for the wrong reason. I don't care if you're a believer. I don't care if you see other people doing it in a way and they're getting access to all of that. You want to make sure that you're doing it unto God, because don't you think he can blow all of that out of the water? He wants to make sure that you are utilizing your skills, gifts, and talents that he gave you for the benefit of his purpose. When you do that and come into alignment, all the doors beyond what you can imagine will open up for you. That's why I am connecting and so interested in having like the life lessons and the business applications and strategies come together with the biblical perspective, because when we understand how the Bible works in all of those areas, we'll start looking at it a lot differently, and then realizing that we have access to way more than we thought. All right. So that is how I'm going to wrap it up to you. God gave you what you needed, but it's our job to use and cultivate the raw material. He's like, here. And it's up to us to work at things, and he will guide us along the way. But we got to start somewhere. So stop begging God for help and use what he already gave you. You can use one or all of the skill sets, but make sure you have mindset in place for sure. All right. So thank you so much for joining me on this journey. If you like this vibe, go ahead and subscribe. You do not have to stop here. Your journey can continue down below, or just stay connected when I do more series and more videos. And yeah, I thank you so much for listening and learning with me. You can stay connected also by grabbing a copy of my book. There are two ways. You can get the physical copy, or I encourage you to go ahead and get the ebook version because it does come with a workbook. And then you have some additional options if you want to learn more and take a more deep dive. Or if you're like, you know what, let me just jump in. I want to be connected. I want to know how to work with you directly. That information is also down below. So thank you so much. And I will see you on the other side. Bye.